If you are not prepared to be wrong, you will never come up with anything original. When I heard Ken Robinson say these words in his TED Talk, first idea, yikes. I don't know if I'm prepared to be wrong, but I'm going to go out on a limb. I've read Dr. Lacona's directions for this, which just says post an initial response. He does not tell us that we must write. So being more of an oral processor myself, I thought I'd come up with a creative way, sort of in the Robinson third talk style, to give you some of my ideas about what I'm thinking about, what I'm processing after these three very intriguing videos by Sir Ken Robinson and some of our readings we've done to date. One of the first things that stood out to me was Robinson's idea of intelligence. And he talks about three things. Intelligence is diverse, dynamic, and distinct. When he talks about it being diverse, he says, we think about the world in all the ways we experience it. We think visually, we think in sound, we think kinesthetically, we think in abstract terms, we think in movement. To me, this really stood out, really connecting the ideas to NAVA and holistic learning and even free schools. How we experience the world is how we should experience our education. The idea of education being dynamic, he really linked with his idea of creativity, the fact that it's the process of having original ideas. I don't know always if my ideas are original, and it kind of scares me. Am I actually producing something that has value, or am I continuing to see things in a very traditional sense? So that's something I'm going to continue to ponder. And distinct. And when Robinson talked about being distinct, he told a story about the dancer choreographer Gillian Lynne, who's choreographed Cats and Phantom of the Opera, and how as a child someone recognized that dancer ability within her, and someone pulled that out of her and said to her mother, take her to a dance studio, let her dance. And that's so beautiful and freeing, to know that someone could have such a profound impact in this day, as Robinson went on in his third TED Talk about the continuing anesthetics we put in children ADHD, where we deaden them. We deaden our children instead of allowing them to dance. I found it very beautiful and refreshing to hear those stories. Robinson said human resources are like natural resources. They're often very deep. You have to go looking for them. You have to create the circumstances where they show themselves. And again, he's talking here about the idea of human ecology, something that I'm beginning to process myself. But we have to look at our children, the students that we work with, as human resources. And this is really connecting to me with a wonderful critical pedagogue, Maxine Greene, whom I know we have talked about in other classes. And Maxine Greene, specifically her pedagogy of the imaginary. It's something I wrote about for my reflective paper, number 1. And to me, this is part of it. If we have to create these spaces where creativity, children, students' innate talents can surface, we need to move towards the imaginary, the what-if scenario. What could this look like in the classroom? What could this look like in society? If you could pull on your talents for what they are, so that I can educate and assist you in this journey, what will it look like? It's, to me, it's very intriguing to view children, first as a creative being and pull that creativity to the forefront. Robinson said we shouldn't be putting students to sleep. I hope not, although I fear sometimes in my 7:45 math classes it's hard for my students to stay awake. But we should be wakening them up to what's inside of themselves. And I fear that this has been lost. I even fear it's lost in myself. In my own baseline document, I talked about a tension, this tension between who I am as a philosopher, as a theorist, as a curriculist, and who I am as a practitioner. Have I Do I continue to waken myself up to what's inside of me? Do I put it into practice? I don't know. I think it's something when we sit and we dialogue and we converse through the wonderful medium of technology, but I would sometimes love to have someone come to my classroom, one of my colleagues, yeah, one of you come and help me move to be a better practitioner. I think that's one thing that might be a little bit lacking. We have our connections together in theory, but do we have it in practice? So let's try to wake up what's inside of ourselves. Let's think about what we can do to help one another move towards becoming better practitioners in whatever creative genre we want to be. As educators, our task is to educate the whole being so that our students can face this future. And Robinson is talking about this future where we have mined away the minds of our children. We have stripped them down to particular commodities that we're looking for. And this is really against some of our readings. Nava, again, who's looking at that holistic education, educating the whole child. And Joel Spring in his global school system paradigm, who's looking at very similar ideas but on a global scale, and the idea of national happiness and what would it look like to educate the whole child, to use those holistic principles into practice. And that's what I'm really excited about is that theory of Nava moving into practice at the end of Spring's book on a global scale. And so I think that's what I'm going to continue to work towards is that theory into practice. And so what's my takeaways? Well, I created this Wordle that has all of my notes from the 3 Ken Robinson TED Talks. And what I see really jumping out are a few words. Human. Too often I think we've mechanized our education system is looking at that factory model, that mechanistic model. We're missing the human. We're missing recognizing that it's important that we see our children first as human beings. Creativity, so important to Ken Robinson, that we need to reinstill the creativity. We need to keep the creativity going, not just when we see these children so young and we deplete their creativity as they move older, but we must keep that creativity within them. And for me, continuing to reach into myself, to figure out what my own future will be, and what capacities I have to think and move from, being a traditional teacher towards, a really transformative teacher. Those are some of my takeaways. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit creative, little bit out there initial posting. I look forward to continuing to dialogue with all of you. Let's move together towards being creative, human educators in this very difficult, complex, challenging world that we live in.